In a small-town hardware store, a teen is caught slipping sandpaper into his hoodie. A grey-bearded stranger steps in, pays for the items, and invites the teen to work with him on Saturdays, risking money, time, and a public clash with store policy. Their quiet partnership surprises the community and sparks small changes that ripple through the store and the neighborhood, building towards a simple, hopeful moment. Before we get started, tap like, share, and subscribe to join the journey. And tell me, where in the world are you watching? Drop your country below. I love seeing the global trail of these stories. The bell over the hardware store door gave a dull ding. It was late afternoon in March, the kind that still felt like February. Snow was grey in the parking lot. Salt crusted the welcome mat. The heater fan rattled. A small radio behind the counter played an old song that someone had turned down too low to hear the words. People came in and out with lists on their phones, griping about faucets and lawnmowers, looking past each other. The boy in the dark hoodie stood in the sandpaper aisle. He was skinny, maybe 16, with short curls and scuffed shoes. His hoodie had a stain on the cuff. He held a pack of sanding sheets up to the light like he was reading it for a test. He read slow, lips moving. He checked grit numbers, flipped the pack over, compared prices. No one saw him. Two men in work boots pushed by with a car full of salt bags and didn't even glance. He slid a small pack into his hoodie pocket. His mouth went tight after he did it. He looked at the end of the aisle. The camera dome in the corner was a dark glass eye. He took a small bottle of wood glue off a peg and weighed it in his hand. A woman passed with a houseplant and flinched like he was a shadow, then kept walking. He set the glue near his other hand. His left knee bounced. The radio kept playing the Too Quiet song. A woman in a red vest looked up from the counter. She had a barcode scanner in her hand and a little walkie clipped to her shoulder. She had a face that had dealt with a lot of returns. She saw a flicker, a shift. She saw a boy in a hoodie and a missing pack on a peg. Her mouth pressed thin. She walked straight toward him, jaw set. "Hey!" "Hoodie. Pockets," she said. Not loud, not nice. People near the end cap went still. Someone cleared a throat. The man in a neon work vest stopped rowing a cart and leaned on the handle, waiting for the show. Salt bags made a wall by the door. The heater fan rattled harder, like it was suddenly trying to be a siren. By the screws, a grey-bearded man watched. He was in a worn canvas jacket with paint flecks. A plaid shirt peeked out at the collar. He had a bowl cap like something from a paint store 10 years ago. Wire-rimmed glasses rested on his nose. He had the look of someone who could find a 3:30 seconds bit in a dark shop by feel. No one noticed him either. He stood still and watched the boy's hand go into his pocket. The boy's fingers shook. He pulled out the pack. He set it back on the peg. His other hand lifted the glue he had not pocketed, and he put it back too. He said, "I..." The word fell on the floor like another screw. The red vest woman reached for her walkie. The man cleared his throat. He stepped from the screws to the aisle. Not fast, not dramatic. His boots squeaked on the dusty floor. He did not look at the people staring. He looked at the woman and then at the boy. He held both. Looks like they were the same kind of thing you cared for. He held up a hand to the manager. "Put it on my tab," he said. It was quiet, but the way the air was held in the store, it might as well have been a shout. The walkie stayed in the woman's hand. "I saw him take it," she said. "We can't." "Put it on my tab," he said again. He nodded toward the counter. "Gordon knows me, or cash." He pulled a folded envelope from his jacket. It was soft at the edges from years of use. He set it out like a bridge. "That's not the point," the woman said. She was red in the cheeks now, out there in the aisle, with all the watching eyes. She had policy and a phone and a headache that had started before lunch. "We call it in. That's the point." "He needs sandpaper and glue," the man said. "We can make a different point." He looked at the boy. "You going to use it?" The boy nodded. It was a small nod. He looked like he wanted to be air. "What for?" The woman, her voice slipped. It walked away from policy for a second. The boy swallowed. "My door sticks," he said. "Our landlord won't fix it." And he stopped. Words hit the salt bags and died. The man didn't push him. "How much is that pack?" he asked the woman. $10. "And the glue?" "8." He looked around with a small smile. "Throw in a tape measure. The cheap one. You got those safety glasses still on promo?" The woman stood with her walkie. She looked at the boy's shoes, at his hands, at his face, at the dome camera. She looked at the man's envelope. She had a line of customers and a head full of rules. She let out a breath. "Fine," she said. The word was shaped like a surrender and a warning. "But you can't just—" The man nodded. "I know," he said. "I'll write my number on the receipt." He turned to the boy. "You're coming by my place Saturday. 9. We'll fix your door right. You can help me with a ramp for a lady down on Lynn Street. You don't ditch me. Deal." The boy looked like someone had handed him a ladder and also a weight. "Okay," he said. His voice was small but steady. He kept his hands open where everyone could see them. He took the sandpaper and glue to the register. The woman walked behind the counter with a stiff back. The neon vest man went back to his salt bags, staring but also not. The radio song rolled into another song. Gordon, at the end of the counter, lifted a hand in recognition at the grey-bearded man. The scanner peeped on each item, quick and high, a receipt printed with a hard, satisfying sound. The man paid cash from the old envelope. He wrote a phone number at the bottom of the paper, slow and neat. The air changed after the receipt printed. It was like someone let warmth in. People stopped holding their breath. The heat fan went back to being just a fan. A walkie clipped back to the woman's vest and looked smaller. She bagged the tape measure and the safety glasses without making a show of it. She didn't smile. She didn't need to. Outside, the cold hit their faces. Clouds balanced in a flat sky. The parking lot was a dirty map of slush and wet asphalt. They stood by the cart corral for a second. The boy held the bag with both hands. He was still hunched like a question mark. "Saturday," the man said. He pointed at the receipt. 9. You got boots. The boy looked down at his shoes. "Kinda. I got spares," the man said. He pulled a short yellow pencil from behind his ear and tucked it in the bag on top of the sandpaper. "See you." He didn't put a hand on the boy. He didn't preach. He walked away to his truck and drove off with 2 sheets of plywood tied down like this was just another errand he had added to a list. At home, the boy spread the pack on a chipped table. The table had marker lines and little burns in it from hot pans. A single bulb lit the kitchen. Someone had taped the switch with 2 strips of blue painter's tape to keep it from popping off. A younger girl with the same eyes sat on the couch with a workbook open and a pencil behind her ear. A pot on the stove steamed. A TV showed a muted game show with bright colors and clapping hands. He opened the glue, and a sweet smell filled the room. He went to the bedroom door that stuck. He ran his hand down the edge of it and felt the rough spots, the rub against the jamb. He marked where it dragged with the short yellow pencil. He sat on the floor with the sanding block and moved his hand in a slow, careful rhythm. Dust lifted and fell in the light. He taped a little towel under the door with painter's tape to catch it so his mom wouldn't cough when she got home from her night shift. His sister looked up and made a face and then went back to fractions. Across town, the grey-bearded man stood in his quiet kitchen. A kettle clicked off. He poured water into a mug with a chip in the rim. He had a calendar by the phone, big squares, not much written lately. He wrote, 9 door plus ramp Lynn in neat block letters on Saturday. He stuck the receipt with the boy's number under a magnet shaped like a hammer. A framed photo on the wall showed him 17 years younger, sawdust in his beard, behind a young man with the same eyes and a goofy grin lifting a birdhouse. The frame had dust on it. He wiped it with his sleeve and then sat down with his tea. On Saturday, the boy showed up early. He had his hoodie pulled up against the cold in a cheap backpack. He stood on the driveway, shifting from foot to foot, and then, when the door opened, he stood still. He smelled cut pine and coffee and old dust. The man handed him a pair of boots that were a little big and a pair of safety glasses that fit fine. They worked in the small garage with the door open. The radio here was louder and tuned to a station where people called in to argue about sports. They took measurements on the door. The boy held the hinge as the man drove screws, letting him steady the drill and feel the bite. They adjusted the latch until it clicked smooth every time. The boy's mouth did a quiet thing like a smile, but he didn't point to it. Then they loaded boards and drove to Lynn Street and built a short ramp at a small white house with peeling paint. A woman with a walker watched from the doorway and tried to say she could pay, and the man waved her off. And the boy kept his eyes on the level bubble and made sure it was true. Back at the store a week later, the red vest woman rolled out a bin by the door. It was a square plastic thing with a hand-lettered sign taped to it, "Scrap wood, free for school projects." She had a headache again, but she also had a memory of a pack of sandpaper and a boy's hands. She put the bin where people coming in had to see it. Gordon touched short offcuts into it and shrugged. "We sweep it anyway," he said. A man in a neon vest came in holding a small box of nails. He put it on the counter and scratched the back of his neck. "Wrong size," he said. Then he pointed at the scrap bin. "Throw him in there for some kid," he said. He didn't look at anyone when he said it. He left with his jaw set softer than last time. Kids drifted in on later Saturdays, shy at first. They heard from someone's cousin that a grey-bearded man in a faded jacket let you help fix stuff. They brought wobbly chairs and a broken drawer and a skateboard with a cracked deck. He showed them how to clamp and how to glue, and, if they stuck around, how to sweep without making more dust. The boy from the hoodie was there most weeks. He came early and stayed until his sister texted that their mum needed the car back or that the rice was almost done. He had a new habit of tapping the pencil against his ear when he thought. He wore the safety glasses and didn't complain when they fogged. He took a little money for a porch step he fixed for a neighbor. He tried to give half to the man in the faded jacket. The man shook his head and pointed at a small box by the shop door where he kept new screws and cheap tape measures and 2 pairs of kid-sized safety glasses. "Put it in there," he said. The boy dropped the folded bills in the box and did not look like he had lost anything. At the store, the woman in the red vest started greeting kids by their projects instead of their hoodies. "What are you building?" she asked. "Birdhouse? Cool." She kept a small stack of cheap tape measures by the register with a handwritten sign. "Take 1, bring it back if you remember." Most didn't remember. She didn't take the sign down. The boy's sister brought her school project over one day. It was a cardboard diorama of a scene from a book, but the base was warped and would not sit flat. The boy showed her how to score and fold a new base from a scrap of thin plywood and glue the cardboard down so it would hold. She looked at him with a look new for her. It was like she was seeing a room she hadn't known was in the house. Months turned, snow to rain, rain to soft green. The radio changed songs for the season. The shop door sat open more. People stopped by because they heard a drill and needed a screw tightened or a little advice, and sometimes they brought donuts. The ramp on Lynn Street took muddy footprints and then dried ones, and then a chalk drawing of a sun by a kid visiting his grandma. One day the red vest woman came by the garage on her lunch break with a box of mismatched screws and a paper cup of coffee she said she hated. She stood just inside the door like she didn't want to be in the way. The boy looked up and nodded at her. She nodded back. And then she looked at the photo on the wall of the grey-bearded man and the younger man in the birdhouse, and she touched the frame with 2 fingers and didn't say anything. When she left, she put the screws on the shelf and didn't make a speech about it. She went back to the store and told Gordon to keep the scrap bin closer to the entrance. The boy never said what else he had wanted to say that first day. He didn't talk much about the apartment, or his mom's shifts, or the neighbor who tried the door at night when the latch stuck. He didn't say that the sandpaper wasn't for fun. He didn't say that carrying the bag out of the store had felt like carrying a brick and a balloon. The grey-bearded man didn't ask for the parts of the story the boy left out. He told him how to square a frame, how to set a nail without bending it, how to measure twice, and he let the boy keep the tape measure even when he forgot to bring it back. Nothing went viral. No one wrote it up. There was no speech. There were just Saturday mornings and small fixes and a bin by the door and a handful of kids who learned that wood has grain and that you should work with it instead of against it and that mistakes can be sanded if you don't panic. There was a woman who once reached for her walkie and now reached for a Sharpie to write free in big letters. There was a man who once stood by the screws and watched a kid get smaller and decided to make himself part of the scene. The ramp went in on a clear, cool morning. The boards fit clean. The bubble sat between the lines. They sunk the last screw and stepped back. The woman inside on Lynn Street pushed her walker out slow, then faster, then smiled without teeth like it didn't matter. The boy stood with his hands in his jacket pockets and his breath in the air. The grey-bearded man took a sip from a dented thermos. The breeze moved through the little maple above them. A grocery cart from down the block rolled across the sidewalk with a wheel that squeaked and then eased up the new wood without catching. They watched the front wheel roll smooth over the edge into the light.